We're in part 2 of this tutorial about 3D scenes in Nuke. I haven't changed much, I just renamed a few nodes so that it's a bit clearer. So for the second half, we're not gonna use cards to build this other part here, because I like this line there and I wanted it to be on a slight curve, so I thought it was the occasion to show you the RidGeo node. So I went into Model and modeled a slightly curved grid so that we have a bit of a round edge here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna load that grid or that model. I've exported an FBX, so you use a RidGeo for that. And in the RidGeo you just pick whatever you need. So here it's a ground mesh FBX. All right. So now if I press tab to go back into 3D, something that I didn't show you is that if you double click on a scene and it's in the properties, then you can look at the scene. And if you get rid of that, it will disappear. So that's why it's handy also to have a scene, so you don't have to like double click on each of them individually. So if I go here and I go like this, that's gonna add them up. But if, yeah. So now to look at this RidGeo, I can double click on it. It's here now. So as you can see, it's a slightly curved grid. If I plug the texture in it, it's gonna be in UV space, which is not really what we want at all, because if we look from the camera, it's not gonna look like, sorry. Oh yeah, of course I don't have the camera because I haven't double clicked on it. So I need to create a scene here. Then I'm reading this scene, and if I plug the camera, everything in that scene will be there. So now I have the camera. All right. So that's not what we want to look at, because this is just the UVs, and we want something looking like this. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna camera project this texture. So to do that, we're actually gonna change the UVs of our object using UV projections. And all we do is we drag it on top here, so it goes like this. It goes texture, mesh, and then we modify the UVs from this guy. There's a bunch of properties here. The default ones are good for us because we're just going to do a perspective projection. And then we plug the camera we want to project from. So now it looks like it's working. We've got this projection. It looks the same as what we expect. However, if I start moving, you'll notice that the image stays where the camera is, as in it floats around so you don't get any perspective or parallax. So that's not good for us. So what we need is a static camera from that camera. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna copy this camera, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna choose the frame we think is a good frame. So in this case, I'm gonna, because we're zooming in, I'm gonna go to the first frame so I don't have any edges. And what I'll do is I double click on this guy, and then by right clicking here and put no animation on all knobs, it will keep the parameters but remove the animation. So now here it's no longer, there's no little a. The little a shows you that it's animated, so this guy is not animated anymore. And if I use this guy as a projection camera now, it's using the first frame or frame 1010 as a reference, and if I move, it sticks to the geo now. I'm just gonna rename this camera projection, so I'm aware that it's only a single frame, and this guy I'm gonna call it camera render, for example. So I'll use it for rendering. So we've got two scenes here, and I'm gonna call that, I don't know, environment. Right. So now for the sky. Well, we're gonna do a similar thing here where we're gonna camera project it, but this time on a sphere. So I'm gonna create a sphere first. Right, this is our sphere. I'm gonna add it to this guy here, and then I'm gonna look at this guy by tapping tab. And you'll notice that you can't see the sphere because it's really small. So same thing, I'm gonna go up to a really big value. So here, once again, I'm using the arrows on the keyboard to make it bigger. It's a very, very easy way to do that. All right, so we've got a sphere. We're gonna make it big, but not so big. So that's frame 1. All right, and then we'll use the same technique for now with UV projection. See what it does. So I'm gonna copy this, pass it here, and then camera project it, and then use this image. That allows me to introduce you to a pretty useful tool, which is PostageStamp, which I think I'll do a video on it because I really love this. What it does, it's kind of like this little dot we had before. It's just a pass-through, but it has a little icon, so it means if you plug it in, you can see what it is, but then you can move it somewhere. And then if you hide the input, you can either hide it from here, hide input, or hit, I think, Alt-H. Yep. Then it turns into a kind of read node, but it's linked to this guy. So it means if you update that guy, this one will be updated as well, which means you can change the read node only in one position. All right, so now we've projected this guy. How does it look like? Let's see. Looking through the right camera. So camera render. All right. Okay, it's projecting and it's giving you parallax. It's pretty good. So we're gonna use something called scanline render, which is just a type of renderer, and all you need is a scene, a camera, and potentially a background. So a background would be just a way of merging stuff on top of each other. So let's say I want to render this text scene here with this camera. When I look, so those guys are 3D scenes. You can't plug them into anything, so anything 2D. So here, see if I try to merge it, it won't let me. On the other hand, this guy is 2D, and it will allow you to be plugged anywhere in the 2D branches. I think the round stuff are 3D and the square things are 2D, but don't quote me on this. Right, so now if I look at this guy, this should be a render. Obviously here I'm still in 3D view, so if I press tab, it should start rendering. So what we see here is actually the render from this camera here, and I need to get rid of all the scenes. From this camera, okay, so as you can see on the frame 38, it's all fucked up because I just chose the depth, but I didn't change their scale. And then what I was mentioning for the background is you can stick a background on it, and then it will use it as a background to put your CG on top. So that's already not so bad if we wanted a static background and a moving text. But that's not what we want. We want this guy to be rendered as well. We have a few options. Either we render them together by creating a scene and merging the two scenes. So here, that would be our rendering scene, let's say. So it gives you a slightly different as this because we're on first frame, but it's camera projected. And then when it moves, it actually moves together. So that's one way. Or we could have two different scanline renderers if we decide that it's more useful as an image sequence for, let's say, effects or like depth of field or whatnot. So the next step is going to be to clean up a bit the depth and all that. So I'm going to do that in speed up or cut because it's a bit boring. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm gonna match the positioning so that the scale is right. So I'm using the backplate here in the background to have some kind of reference of where they are. Oh, look at that, that wasn't too bad with the dimension. Alright, so let's try we're gonna place the dimension in the same place, and then I'm gonna match again the scales there so that it matches where we were. Alright, so we've got some problems here. One is that this scale, the scale of the environment, doesn't match the scale of the scene at all, so it looks a bit stupid. So that we can fix easily by adding a TransformGeo. It should plug here, yeah. And then that's gonna be done from the center of the world, so hopefully that's right for us. So we're gonna just scale it up. Okay, so the scale seems right because we've got the triangle and all that, but now we've broken everything here. So what we're gonna do I mean in the projection. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna copy it before the projection so that we don't break everything. Into the current render. Okay, so what's happening here is that we've got the center of our transform is not the center of the camera we've done. So now we need to place that again. So we're just gonna move this guy further along. I'm not happy with the height of this now because it's obviously way too big. So we're just gonna scale it down as well. Okay, that's pretty cool. Okay, so that's where we're at. At the beginning I've got this little rotation, so I'm gonna change the frame range. So right now what I would do is probably match the original logo a bit better. So we're missing stuff like shadows on the 3 and glow on the Nuke. I'll be using things that I think we saw in the second tutorial, and I'm gonna speed it up as well because it's a bit time consuming. But the only thing that I probably didn't show was the blur node, so I'm gonna show it now. It's like super easy. You literally type B and it's blur, and then you just blur things. So that I'm gonna use to create the glow behind the Nuke text, and also the shadow behind the 3 with a little transform. I think the 3 I'm gonna do another card, although it could be on the same layer. I think it's cuter. I also don't really like how much the 3 moves out. I think maybe that's too much, especially with the Nuke. So maybe what I'll do is I'll put the Nuke super close to the camera at the same depth as the 3, and I think that should look a bit nicer. So you'll notice here I'm moving everything in one go. That's when you press Control and start moving things around, it will drag everything that's parented or up the tree. That helps to organize your comp. Okay, so that's pretty much what you can achieve in 20 minutes in 3D in Nuke. Is really to show the basics. Obviously you need to do much more work to get something nicer, like the depth of the triangle is weird, there's a line here, so we could have masked it out and probably add some depth of field. I might do that now and put what it looks like as a video. Cheers everyone!